LinkedIn, but if we could just chat among close friends here. So anyway, good to see you. What are you doing this summer anyway? You at the cabin or what?
Yeah, I'm at our lake house. So we rebuilt our lake house a couple years ago. So now it's all this great wood.
It reminds me of the grandparents.
The whole cottage. We call them cottages. The whole place looks like this, with lots of vaulted ceilings and windows. Oh, yeah, no, it's great. It's just been kind of hot.
Yeah, it's definitely hot. Well, I see we got a couple people at least on the StreamYard who are viewing. Feel free to pop your name or where you are in the comments there. But this is our super casual, figuring it out as we go along Thursday sessions that we do. There's Harold. Hey, Harold, did you want to come in? I did send you an invite, and your invite should have a link that would allow you to get into to be up here with us, but totally your call. So as I was saying, this is our sort of weekly session that we have to kind of build momentum, learn, come up with ideas, work through problems for the still brand new Community Carbon Removal Purchasing Challenge program of the Four Corners Carbon Coalition. And I'll drop the link for a second if you're not familiar with it in comments, the page to it. And this is a new initiative of Four Corners, which is an organization that I helped start with Boulder County, Flagstaff, and a few other Western states that was really trying to animate local governments and to put the local governments, counties, cities, towns in a position of kind of being at the cutting edge of implementing carbon removal, like local governments have been for a lot of other now mainstream areas of the energy transition, from community choice aggregation to local recycling programs and community solar and charging initiatives. So we think a real missing piece at Four Corners in the formula for success for carbon removal is to have more of that activity, which we think can unleash only a lot of support and understanding, but new ideas. And so we've been around for a few years and have really primarily been based, our primary program has been grant programs where local governments kind of get together, pull together some grants, and then fund first of kind carbon removal projects that match up with local themes of interest. And again, I'll share it, the link in just a moment, so you can take a look at it if you're not familiar with it. But this particular project is a bit of a sort of a tweak to that model, where we thought it's so important that we build demand for carbon dioxide removal across a whole range of different solutions. And we were inspired by an initiative that the Biden administration put together that was kind of having the federal government take a relatively small amount of money and buy carbon removal from a variety of different carbon removal companies that they would pre-select through a very, very competitive application process. There was 100 of different companies. And so the government put together these standards of what it wanted to do. It wanted to have a bunch of different forms of carbon removal that could potentially scale within the United States. And it brought together all sorts of subject experts from national labs and academia and within government to select which companies they would make these purchases for on behalf of the government. So we decided at Four Corners, wouldn't it be interesting if we could get communities to do a similar thing at a much smaller scale, obviously per community, but in aggregate, could we get a lot of different places that were doing this? And we've sort of thought of like a $5,000 target per place, whether it's a town or a neighborhood or a county or a city. And the bigger part, though, that we really think is significant about it, that Sue could tell you, and anybody who's been, sort of fighting the good fight on carbon removal for the last several years, is that the exercise of having to look at a variety of different options of carbon removal companies and make a selection, whether you represent a city or you're a group of citizens within a city or whatever it is, that looking at different options and then creating a criteria by which you'd say, I like that one, and it might be driven by, I like that one because the company is in state and we want to support the company, or it might be, we could see that kind of solution happening locally because of X, Y, and Z factors, or it might be, we just think that's the most interesting one that the world most needs. And we wouldn't prescribe too much what that would be. But if you go through that exercise, on the other side of it, you know a lot more about carbon removal in very, very specific, concrete terms. And that can be the foundation for greater levels of ambition going down the line. So, Sue, I need to come up with a better way to get very quickly say that. And but I do think it's important to at least repeat it. And so the last few weeks, we've been kind of getting on. Last week, I did a little bit of a survey of just the different kinds of carbon removal that are represented among the suppliers that communities can choose from. These are the same ones that were actually selected by the federal government. We decided to say, hey, if Uncle Sam put in all this effort to bring together a bunch of scientists to pick a bunch of carbon removal companies, that's good enough for us. So we're going to go ahead and use a sample of those. And so we've been, the purpose of this call is over time, as we keep doing this throughout the year and maybe beyond, is people will have questions, and particularly the very earliest people like Sue, who you'll meet in a second, who are considering to start a campaign where they are. We wanted to just really war room it a little bit, or be able to think through it, and try to establish early successes in different types of campaigns, and that new people could come in and say, I want to do that because I learned about how Sue did it, or how Chris did it, or this or that. And so we'll cover a whole bunch of range of subjects. Sue and I are very good friends. We've been working together for a long time, but regardless who's on this side, it's going to be very casual and very kind of practical. And let me let Harold in. Harold's always great. He was here last week, and he's trying to get some stuff going on the West Coast. So I just invited you, Harold. You should be able to come in. So all right, let me shut up. Sue, you're in New Jersey. Tell us a little bit about yourself real quick, and then we're going to start thinking through what we might be able to do with Sue's mad advocacy skills. And
so. All right. Well, yeah, so I'm in New Jersey. I was, until last year, the Sustainability and Energy Coordinator at Raritan Valley Community College. And while I was there, I was, they buy RECs and offsets. And for the past couple of years, I was able to get them to buy removals. So they bought, hey, Harold, they bought removals covering 1% of their scope 1 emissions for the first year, and just bought through the patch platform. And then the second year, they bought 2%, and they bought that through Patch and Frontier. And off the top of my head, I know that there were some concrete ones, concrete removals. There was forestry. There was soil carbon. But I feel like there was another one that they bought. But anyway, so now, I've presented, since I left RVCC, I've been working for myself. I just got my master's in carbon management from Columbia University, where I was taking classes part-time for way too long. And so last year I started my own consulting business. So I have a client nearby who's looking at buying removals. And I've presented to the Citizens Climate Lobby local chapter about removals. Beyond that, I know that, I've got a lot of contacts who know that I'm working on removals, but in talking with my clients and their management, the biggest hurdle seems to be just understanding what removals are, why we need them, and why should they spend money on this, right? And how can they do it and feel comfortable that they're doing something that's a good use of their money, that they were asking about cost effectiveness. Mm-hmm. And they were also wondering about, who is their audience? Like, who are they doing this for? So even though they have a commitment to be carbon neutral by 2035, I think were originally thinking, okay, we're just going to electrify everything, and they have property where they have forest, and so we're just going to use whatever carbon sequestration we would have in the forest to add to that. And they have some restoration projects where they could say that's additional. But just trying to get them to move forward to like be willing to purchase. So I kind of put out there to them, just let them know that this carbon removal challenge is out there, but they're still, a few steps back from being able to even contemplate that. So
Yeah, but I do want to point out is, where you are position wise is very advanced compared to where some of your counterparts that will pop up in other places are. So what's useful for us is you went through the exercise that successfully got one purchase, right, from that, and so they didn't know anything about it, I'm sure. And you also, what you were talking about is a position that so many, whether it's a school or a city or a town, are finding themselves in, where they were like, okay, we're going to maximize the amount that we can do to reduce our emissions through the usual things that are at their disposal, electrification, efficiency, electric vehicles. And then if there's a margin, there's trees, right? And then as they get further and further down, they're like, that's not going to quite do it, right? And so that creates this, it's almost opening up this door for curiosity and real, more immediate kind of interest in what is carbon removal, how does it work, right? Is that kind of a fair assessment of like where you find your clients or your elected officials that you?
I think that my elected officials, that's another good one. I'm on my county's energy council, and one of our county commissioners is on the council, and so I was just in a meeting with them a couple days ago, and everybody on that council understands the need to act on climate, and is discouraged by the current federal situation. And and then the question is, okay, what can we do about it? And so I did put this program out there to them as well. So just introducing the idea, but they don't have they have a climate policy. They want to be carbon neutral by 2050. They have electric vehicles. But I don't know that there is a budget line for buying carbon credits of any sort. And so I don't know how to get them to purchase anything. Even if it's just $5,000, I feel more comfortable, going to Citizen Climate Lobby and asking individuals, or going to the Chamber of Commerce and asking businesses, or there's like a sustainable business group in town, in the county that I could, talk to. So I feel more comfortable asking them from the perspective of, there's this new local business that's trying to address climate, and you care about climate and you care about local business. So, please support this initiative. I think that, with a small purchase, but I don't feel comfortable asking a municipality or the county to make a purchase because there's no budget for it yet. And I feel like that's like a big hurdle.
Yep. Yeah. I've thought about it. Harold, I'll let you jump in if you have some thoughts. I think what we're talking about. We wanted to do a deeper dive with Sue because she's very well positioned. I'm now on the other side of the river. This is as fertile of an opportunity, along with Albany, which I'm working on, and hopefully I'll have Albany guy on in the next couple of weeks so we can talk to him. But to me, it sounds like it's a great opportunity for this kind of hybrid thing where if you're getting the locality to a position of like, I get it, this sounds interesting, I want to learn more about it, but they don't have a budget for it. Could you do something that gets their blessing? Maybe there is something
that's
that
what
they
I'm
can
thinking of. Like, maybe they'll be like, hey, community,
Yep.
want to do something about climate? Go listen to what Sue has to say at this, meeting or whatever.
and they learn about it. I mean, again, that's the big thing is and if somebody feels like they have a say in it, and they can kind of touch and feel that there's a real company, then something like this could actually potentially be deployed. And I kind of picked up some inspiration. I think Harold knows about it. SB 643. That's this California CDR procurement pilot bill that is the successor to the one that we worked on last year. It's been driven by these amazing activists in California. It's passed the Senate. It's made it through you just passed through its second committee in the Assembly. We might pass this thing this year. It's like a 50 million thing, but they structured it very different context. But they were like, this is different. Is the state will not put any money forward for carbon purchasing unless a private sector or some other entity first buys. Do you know what I mean? And so it has that, which I really like that actually, because I think imagine like a miniaturized version of this. Again,
like a public-private.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like you might say that maybe the city you could propose to them something, they will put $2,000 in, or maybe not, whatever their level of tolerance is. If a certain level is raised by businesses and students and individuals or something like that, and you can get those people excited where you really split it up into little pieces where we get, let's just say you pick Eon or Avnos. They come out, you do an event, they learn about it, maybe there's some way in which you get a group of these people can vote and then they pick which one they want. You know what I mean? Like there's just a lot
yeah. I could see that. Yeah. I was thinking, I just need to wait till Avnos's price is set and then I can go with them locally and then have Princeton, work with a separate campaign in Princeton to try to go with Ion. But I like that idea of saying, okay, we've got a choice here. Help me make this choice.
Yeah.
And then hopefully you're invested in it a little bit and want to support the choice that we make together. I like that.
You could almost like Shark Tank it or something where we could get those guys, they give a basic pitch, they can look at the stuff and then people get buy-in because they're able to vote. You know what I mean? But you could also have a thing where if you commit to a $20 contribution or something, you get a vote, almost like a co-op type of. I've just been thinking about this now that we're actually trying to do this. I've been thinking, wow, there's a zillion ways you could do it, and I think both options are really cool because they represent such polar opposites of what CDR can kind of look like, but they're both Jersey, right? And I even did some research this week, Sue, on. I found out that last year, the Department of Environmental Protection, or I think that's what it's called in New Jersey, they published a 62-page report on maximizing soil carbon sequestration in New Jersey, a plan for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they're talking about some of these things. None of them, they're more organic soil carbon, but at least opens up a door for it. And then I was doing some research on what is there's moderately high acidity in New Jersey.
Yeah, and talking to Ion, Adam Wolf, he's like, no, we're not doing this in New Jersey because it's not warm enough
for their thing, for Olive. But I wonder if even just it's not that it has to be Ion that does it, or that it's what I mean. You just wonder if you have at least some frame of reference that in New Jersey they're thinking about doing.
That's a good reference. Yeah,
you know what I mean. And that to me
this is a real thing. The DEP just looked at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So do you see if I have a maybe a meeting with the Citizens Climate Lobby or something, or with the Chamber of Commerce, and try to pitch this campaign, do I have somebody from Avnos and somebody from Ion there to speak, or is that they're shilling or whatever the word is, does that make it too too much of a give me money for my business kind of thing, as opposed to we want to do something good?
Let's pause for a second. Get Harold. I have several thoughts, but Harold's always, a good lateral thinker. Unless you don't have anything to say yet, Harold. But there's multiple ways in which you could potentially do this, which I'd love to help you out with, again, because I'm local here. But Harold, anything sparking in your noggin there?
Yeah, sure, lots. Early on, Sue, you mentioned that the initial hurdles include what is it? Why do we need to do this? And there's some pretty compelling arguments that can be made fairly quickly, but you have to establish that first. And it's just the overwhelming size of the legacy pollution compared to annual emissions. Everybody's focused on annual emissions.
Yeah.
What we need people to focus on is the legacy, which is what's really causing the problem. So in your discussions with people, to get them to see that first, I think that's critical, because then that realization becomes part of their I want to do something about climate mentality.
Yeah.
And you're not just introducing them to something that they don't know about, and now it gives them a reason to want to know more. And the second thing, when Susie from Boulder, Susie Strife, was talking about something that I think can really work, and that's do something on the ground, not just purchase removals from a selected company, but get a product from a selected company, or even maybe a product from another company, and do a sidewalk, or do as Chris, you mentioned, biochar for street plantings. These are things that the community can then get engaged in, that they can point at and say, we did this, and this is how much carbon dioxide that was removed, and we supported the development of the industry.
Well, that's what I see is potentially immediately downstream of this, Harold, to a degree, is that just the nature of this campaign, it is obviously focused on a purchase, but because it's small and it entails sort of comparing and making choices based on what you think is the best fit, I hope that the directions that could be taken after that is like, well, that was interesting. Maybe next year we buy more. Or if it's a fit for a particular place, you might say, maybe we could do that kind of thing here. You know what I mean? That's the way, and there'll be other, sort of vistas that potentially open up in terms of what it leads to. But I look at this as this very hands-on, putting some skin in the game, but not so much skin in the game that just, if you've done that, a hell of a lot more about carbon removal, and you feel empowered because you were part of the choice or part of the support, But I think in these cases, it would at least be interesting. There's many angles with ION that you could take. You could take the local company. This is extremely cool that this is coming out of Princeton. We should be proud of it. We could look and see if not that company specifically, and it might not be part of their interest because they do olivine, or it's just not what they're focused on. But there might be others. I was doing some research about that before, which I can send some links to. Somebody who's doing a golf course with ERW in New Hampshire or whatever, and it could lead to, like, for them, there could be, maybe there is a deployment possibility, in New Jersey, and that's part of the reason why we're doing it. But I think for you, Sue, what you said before is you could take one group, right, that you work with, so you're not just unilaterally making a decision. Maybe your maybe Citizens Climate Lobby. Let's just say that for a second. You have a group of people there, and maybe you're lucky enough to get the interest of one of these people that represents your locality and say, we'd like to have you be involved and have a vote and be part of the process. And that group makes the selection. And then the other groups you go out to, with the help and, enthusiasm of that core group, the other ones you go out to, whether it's a Rotary or it's a schools or whatever, businesses, those are the ones you say, this is why we selected it. Your fellow citizens selected it. And now we're trying to hit this goal. Can you help us hit this goal? You know what I mean? Like, that's manageable because
I like that. I like that it's not just me saying, well, hey, I live in Bridgewater and Avnos has a place in Bridgewater, so give me money for them.
Exactly.
That's not as compelling.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. No, I like that.
Another part of Chris's argument in forming this is the necessity for helping scale these startup companies. And they're not all startups, but these very young companies. And if people get the need to do this, then it's not a big step to say, now the companies that are starting to do this need help. Federal government is stepping away. For now, we can pick up the slack by supporting them by doing these purchases.
Now is the moment for that, right? I mean, many of these.
Yeah, I mean, that's the story. That's the story that gets.
Yeah.
It, like, DOE chose these people, and then the money disappeared, and these poor people, they're good enough, but the program disappeared, and now you can step in. That's the compelling line.
In 2016, remember? I mean, so many of these commitments that local governments now have, where they're trying to figure it out. They're like, "Oh Jesus, we can't do this." Also, many of those trace back to literally like 2016, May of 2017, when he pulled us out of the Paris Agreement. It just it created so much energy about we have to compensate for it. You know what I mean? And I think that could certainly be something that generates momentum for this. The other question, Sue, too, is because you're connected to a variety of places, you could say we're going to start it off in Bridgewater, or Jersey has often those constellations of towns. I'm not sure if it's quite the same where you are, but certainly in northern New Jersey, that kind of all work together on stuff where there's
I mean, there are, just sort of the northern part of our county is pretty closely connected, and I know people on environmental commissions on three nearby towns, and it's just, it goes back again to, when I start getting towns involved, how does the message change?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's that they're buying something through TerraSet, where they're not going to be really owning the removals directly. Anyone who's really doing the carbon accounting wants to own those, and they would want to do a separate purchase. I think we've talked about this before, but I keep stumbling over that.
We can do that though, Sue, just to be clear.
To agree to make a purchase.
Yeah, no, if the town, if the town wants to come to an agreement with one of these companies where it's not through TerraSet, I think we could absolutely arrange that. You know what I mean? I think that's probably a possibility. For the TerraSet part, though, that just makes it really easy because it comes with this Give Lively thing that they can give to. They have the nonprofit status, so it certainly works really, really well for taxpayers, whether they're individuals or businesses. It's just, and then they're also supporting the program TerraSet and talking about it in their newsletter. But I think if there was a town that was seriously interested in doing $5,000 for it, and they want to have some claim that they can make against it, we wouldn't do that for $20 things. But if it's something, and if it looks like there's another opportunity, like all of the companies that are part of this are invested, they get it, they understand why we're trying to do it. You know what I mean? And so if they feel like there's a few towns that would like to be able to, in a more formal way, claim that against their net zero, there's ways we could probably arrange for it. I'll have to ask them about it. So I wouldn't get too caught up on the TerraSet.
Okay. Right. Good. Yeah. So then I guess the question is, do I wait? I mean, I'm sort of feeling like, let me tee things up for September, right?
Yeah. That's the way I'm thinking about it too.
And so I can reach out to, like I said, the Citizens Climate Lobby, the Chamber of Commerce, the Sustainable Business Group. I think I would want to start with Citizens Climate Lobby, and I like that idea of having them vote on which supplier to go with. I like that. But so Avnos said they needed some time to get all the details set before they could move forward with the TerraSet arrangement. And so,
we can check back with them. It's my impression was they were quite like it's a lot of these companies are facing like there's these.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're trying to get approved by Isometric, and that's
exactly.
like so super important. Like get that done first.
Exactly.
But do I wait until Avnos's price is set before trying to move forward? Like I'd hate to have something where I'm like, well, the local company isn't quite ready yet, and so we don't know what price it's going to be, but we have to try to pick between them and Ion or Crew or
I think part of it depends on who you're talking to, how much again, if we were talking about something that was like 100,000 tons or something, right? Then there's a real question about like, that would be significant if the reason why the cities are trying to do it is because they wanted to right out the bat be a wedge in their overall sort of net zero thing, right? And then cost becomes really important at that point, right? They need to figure out, but if at this point it's more of an exercise again of educating people about carbon removal, the different ways, and they can think about it either through a lens of future purchases or, trying to be more supportive of projects like this potentially happening or supporting companies that are doing that in the area that might serve an external market. I just don't know. At this point, we could probably tee it up without giving people an exact figure about the cost.
Right. If it's more about the spend versus the price per ton.
The spend and the being clear about like, we want you to understand what this is like and to incorporate within your imagination and future thinking how CDR might be a part of it. And we think that this is the way to do it. It's a pretty low cost way of doing it, but it could be pretty high impact because it'll, all the stuff that we know is sort of foundational to the campaign that I don't think we need. Let's try to get that number as soon as we can. I think we can, but I think there's certain things we can kind of proceed with in a way of like, hey, I'm trying to do this campaign. Let me explain. There's gonna be two. They're here in New Jersey, very different. We could probably go on that. I think.
Okay.
Would be my thoughts.
And I was just thinking, like, if I do this initial meeting with Citizens Climate Lobby and they pick one, then I think almost like as a point of information or like a follow-up event, I would like to be able to go to these other venues and say, hey, this is what Citizens of Climate Lobby, chose. And, I invite you to this tour of the Avnos facility, or I'm going to have some event with the co-founder of ION and you can ask them questions directly or something like that, where maybe they're not at my pitch, but they're, a follow-on to people who want to know more.
Yeah, I love that idea. You could either have I was thinking about the Avnos one, which obviously lends itself to it. There's a thing you can go to and it's like, wow, you know what I mean? It's kind of a cool story, that you could either have that be something that precedes the selection, or you make the selection and then once it is a way of getting people excited about it and contributing money, you do an event, you know what I mean? And I'm trying to remember, how far away are you from Princeton too? Because it could be a thing where you kind of like, you do the one and then that becomes the model for the other. You're right there in Bridge. There's many ways. It's really a choice that you could make, but you could say that we're.
Yeah, I'm an hour from Princeton.
Yeah. And they probably have crazy climate commitments both at the university.
Yeah, they have a really active sustainable Princeton group that I would go to first, but I would ask Adam at ION, for suggestions. I'm sure he's connected to everybody.
Yeah. If you did something there, you could really make the case of this is our CDR company. You know what I mean? This is the one here. It came out of here. There's researchers here. You could sell it almost entirely on that, there. But anyway, you're about to say something. I think, Harold, it sounds like you inhaled and I cut you off.
Just alternatively, maybe another way to approach this is to get a bunch of people in different groups, all maybe it's CCL, maybe it's a Princeton group, maybe there's a community group when you're on the local commission, and you get a group committing to some, I don't know whether to call it a donation, a contribution to a fund that's going to invest in one or more of these companies. And you don't have to really pick the company at the beginning. And that opens up the imagination for people saying, well, we don't know exactly, but we really like the idea of contributing to the growth of some of these companies by investing. And we can, once we have a large enough commitment, we can sort of as a group, as a crowd, decide where it's going to go. In other words, it's less specific at first, but it's broader so that more people can, their imaginations can be tickled. Oh, it could be ERW. It could be limestone from DAC. It could be whatever it's going to be. And so that people get to see, oh, there's all these different ways to do this. I think I should be invested in exploring in this.
I'm curious what you think of that too. I have a theory that the more specific the thing is, that you can kind of tell people this is what we're doing, or here's some options, the more likely people will be to contribute.
I agree with you, Chris. I feel like everything is so intangible that it's such a relief to see here's a real something, a real company that's really making an impact doing removals, and I can help them.
Yeah.
As opposed to there's this general problem that I could approach this way.
I think that really works locally in your situation because you have a couple companies there.
Yeah. If it's not local, it's a harder sell.
Unless the thing that the solution is, again, I could visualize that here. Like for instance, Susie, when we went over how they led them to crew, they had a bunch of local factors. The factor wasn't that the company was there, but it was that for the last 5 years, Boulder has been, doing biochar and the concrete stuff and, looking at other things. And they're really interested they are very much in the, what could we potentially do here using what we can. And so they were really drawn to the crew thing because there is a wastewater treatment facility right there. And so, by exploring that, making this purchase, it gives them the first step in to say, well, maybe we will do that or something like that here, but it wasn't because the company was there. And that's what I'm hoping, Harold, is like where you are, you're in a very startup rich region, at least anyway. There's several of them there, but I hope that, by going through this exercise, that people have picked a reason that's that specific, like, oh, I want to do that, or that's the goal. In my conversations with Albany, it's starting to kind of like, which is we have a follow-up, I'm actually going upstate next week. But I could immediately, just through early conversations, kind of shrink the pool of what they were considering down based on that conversation I had with them. You know what I mean? Like, this will probably be interesting. This will probably be interesting. And even with the 9 options that we have, it's like, it's good to try to like narrow it down anyway. Like, it's a lot of options to select from. Like, in a way, you want to like kind of talk and say, like, get some fundamental sense of like, what are the kinds of things you're interested in? And then maybe there's 3 options that people would more seriously consider, but to be honest, I don't know how it will work, but anyway, I'm wondering, Sue, just for like a next step, if there is something we could do. You've already taken steps. You've already brought it onto the radar of people.
Yeah.
You think like try to get your posse of citizen climate lobby people to say, hey, do you want to be part of the selection committee for this?
Yeah, I think so. And then, and it may even be that the head of my local citizens climate lobby came to the kickoff, the launch webinar. I have to go back. Actually, maybe you can check the registration.
Yeah, I could probably.
I know I sent it out to people.
Yeah.
I think she was on. So we can check that later. But yeah, that's my next step, is trying to see if I can line up something with them and do something, at one of their September meetings.
And I think if we check in with Adam and with Abnos, we could. Yeah. Would you want at that level where you could do a thing where they don't need to appear, or maybe they do a pre-recorded thing, or maybe they do Zoom in or whatever. It would be interesting to kind of get them to sort of be available in some degree, or sort of personally recognizing it. The other thing that'll be fun too, Sue, is like, I keep thinking about this, like, it depends on how many people are selecting. If it's a very informal thing where it's like 5 people around and you just kind of like qualitatively, intuitively say, I like this for that reason. But if you have larger ones and you want to make a process of it, like, I've been trying to come up with these different scenarios of, here's a scorecard. You know what I mean? Like, as a group, you determine that a local company really matters to me, or the cost thing really matters. And you could almost like procurement come up with a simple sort of scorecard, and where people don't arbitrarily, they score it, and then you look at all of it, and that's how you come up with it. You know what I mean? Like that'll be a fun thing to explore about how are decisions sort of made. You know, what do people prioritize? You know.
Yeah. Well, so what I would do probably is just reach out. So the woman's name is Nadine, who runs the local Citizens Climate Lobby, and she's been doing it for 10 years or more. I would brainstorm with her about how she would want to structure it. But I like that scorecard aspect of it.
I came up with a couple of dummy versions of it, you know, that I can share with you. Very simple, but like, but the other thing too. So if you want me to, just because obviously I have a real interest in this, because you're hitting there's a few little places here where we're trying to get some early wins that are different from each other, and not to put too much of a burden on you, but clearly you're taking the reins here, and I feel high hopes for it. But if you want me to, in your interactions with any of those people, if you want me to be kind of part of that, to sort of explain a little bit, or it would be just very useful for me to almost see how it unfolds. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of in a way like almost like the pilot of this type of campaign where you're trying to get a bunch of people together. Susie just, was able to say, we're doing this. I understand carbon removal. I'm going to do it. But so, count me in on that if that's helpful. I would love to see how it unfolds.
All right.
Okay, so those action items, then you'll reach out to Nadine, maybe, and then if you want to post that, if you also want me to be part, I can kind of wrangle together. You're already in touch with Adam, I think, and we've talked.
Yeah, I've got emails for Adam and Will. So
okay, we could explain to them. Okay, well, the moment is coming here. If you get like the CCL, like this is going to be the jury for it, and this is our plan to, once we pick one, to then try to get other businesses. And I wonder what the CCL one too is. There somebody that formally represents the city that would want to at least be part of that? Is there somebody within the sustainability office or a city council member that would just be kind of fun to have like at the table for it?
Yeah, there might be one in the town south of where Avnos is who could attend. I think they have a sustainability person on staff. I mean, there are environmental commissions we can invite people from. I'll ask Nadine, and she's got a good sense of whether she can get these folks to come to a CCL meeting.
Okay, and you thought that would probably be a September one, maybe?
Yeah.
So in the meantime, then, so we could come up with like a little bit. This could be a nice test structure. If we wanted to come up with like, we want you to select, that we could come up with a little bit of a framework for criteria or something that just makes it easy for people, where they're not like, I don't know if I'm making a decision. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe it is something simple where people just look at the, presentations of what they are, and they just, for whatever reason, they're like, I like that one. You know what I mean? Or we could kind of construct the exercise a little bit, that would give us time, if we're looking at September is the moment for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the idea of a scorecard is really helpful. So I want to flesh that out a little bit.
Let me share with you the thing I came up with. I'll just email it to you. It's actually like a blog post, because I had to, I haven't posted it yet because I'm not quite satisfied with what it is, but at least for sharing with you guys, it was to give out to people. It was the cost, the sort of the values or background of the company, what you think has the biggest impact. And people don't need to pick all of those, but they could decide, okay, well, these are sensible categories. And then I can kind of calibrate them, where you could say, global impact is the most important thing to me. We'll give that 50%, but to at least give people the things. And there's also a great learning moment for that. Then you're requiring that people are learning about some of the fundamental things we want people to pay attention to about carbon removal.
Yeah.
If you give some kind of like relatively simple version of that, like, like durability. We always talk about durability, in carbon removal. Maybe you want to give that 20%. Why does this matter? Well, it matters because of this, So I don't know if you want me to share what I came up with, we can kind of think that through.
Sure.
That
Yeah, that would be great.
All right,
Yep.
cool. All right, great. So let me know when you, again, either copy me on Nadine or get back to me when she hears from me, but maybe we can kind of take it from there as a first step.
Okay.
Would be great. But yeah, I'm excited. It would not surprise me if this one takes off first. And I'll let you guys know too with so the Albany one, I'm hoping will be, I've got real interest, a signal of interest from the director of sustainability there. And then I have my whole family and all my friends that live there as well. So that's a good possibility for a kind of a hybrid thing, where you get the endorsement of the city, maybe a little bit of a contribution, and then I will do my own event or something, where I could pull people together. So if we're doing those kind of in parallel, I think we're teed up by September, along with a few other places. That would be pretty awesome. But cool. What about you, Harold? What do you? I know you're still in kind of learning mode and thinking through, but didn't know if any of this.
Well, no.
Sparks fly here, and you made that awesome brochure that you're sending around to folks, so you thought that would be a better way for them to absorb the information. So,
well, a lot of times we're reaching out to people just by email and phone, and they want to see something they can read and pass around and show people.
Yeah.
So the website is probably more than they want as an initial guess, so that's all it is. But as Carl, who couldn't be here today, as you might have noticed, requested a copy of the slides that you used previously for a presentation that he's got coming up at his local Los Altos.
Got to give those to him.
Yeah. And Sue, in presentations to a couple of CCL chapters around the country, we've used, we have a whole deck, but we have some slides that might be useful in terms of establishing why this legacy pollution is such a problem that we have to pay attention, and why people, it's very graphic. You just get it with a couple of slides. So I can send you and share that.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you.
Because I think you're right on the money when you say you got to establish that first.
Right.
So there's a group in the San Francisco Bay Area called Act Now, and I've reached out to them. They seem to be pretty interested. They want to do an interview about the campaign to their audience, and they're regional. So there's 9 counties in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they're all focused on climate and doing local and regional things. So this might be a good fit for some of we'll just see.
They've already expressed at least some high-level interest in learning more?
Well, the ED reached out to me.
Oh, nice, man.
And wanted to do an interview. So, I don't have a date for the interview yet, but I've got material.
Oh, that's great, man. I'll show you the thing that Harold made, which is great. Here it is. So there's just this very simple kind of handout that it's opening up right now. Here it is, which is great, and I love it that you made it. It's just whatever works, and you shared it with me. And I'm hoping in every instance, whether it's this piece of collateral or this kind of meeting I had or whatever, that if we can get this like first phase of a good handful or set of options as we get teed up, that then it makes it that much easier for any future person that said, well, these 5 places did it. It was just some normal people who got together, did it. So anyway, really appreciate this, Harold. I'll share it with you too, just so she can see it.
Yeah, I'd love to have access to that.
Yeah, I'll Discord it to you right now, actually. So
okay.
So anyway, thanks for taking that initiative, Harold. Not surprised, but
the other thing I wanted to thanks, Chris. In the future, like in the fall, not this summer, but I think it would be great if we had something on the calendar rather, where we get the early adopters, the early participants. So for Susie, for one, having a sustainability director and someone with her position in a local government willing to lead a conversation with other sustainability people in local governments for them about the challenge. I think if we had something like that on the calendar, it could be really useful.
Yeah, I agree. We are doing an event, which Sue, you should definitely come to. This is one of the things that Christiane's doing for the city CDR initiative during Climate Week. That's cities as carbon sinks. And it's quite interesting. It's a few hours long. I can't say it, but we have a pretty awesome venue, it looks like, for it, like a really awesome venue for it during Climate Week. And what we're trying to do now is he's got all these cities that are participating in this coalition that are doing like data submission to try to like sketch out at least what are some carbon removal opportunities, and to get mayors from those places to come to the event. But if we can get like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get Susie to come to it, but you know, we're already kind of thinking along those lines for this event. How do you get one city who gets it, or multiple cities who get it, talking to other ones who don't know if they get it yet? You know, like that's the kind of nature of exercise. But we could do a very fast, cheap, and easy version of that, like on a webinar. I think is kind of what you're describing, right, Harold? Like if we get like,
yeah, you don't have to travel.
Yeah, you get a few examples of that, get those people from their own words. Yeah, this is why we did it. This is how we did it. You know, these are the things we thought about. You know, that peer modeling is the way to do it.
It's getting the invitees to listen in on it. That's the trick. It's probably easier to get the speakers than the audience.
As we found out with many things before, you know, you really need to work to get people to come to it. But you know, given enough time, we could do it. All right. Well, Harold, let me know if when that person interviews you, if it's something that, you know, resonates with them. I like that. It seems like you got, what did you say, 9 counties? Was that right?
They're reaching their audiences in 9 counties and they're involved.
Yeah. So keep me posted on when that is. Not that I'm going to, you know, need to be a part of it exactly, but it'd be good to see if we get an uptick of people who look at the site and they're like, yeah, I'd like to, you know, do this, to be able to capture those people. I think would be great.
Mm-hmm. Share those same slides with me also.
Yeah, I'll give those to you actually. So last week, Sue, we did I just did this kind of like basic overview of like, what are the different forms of carbon removal that are represented, and like, how are they similar? How are they different, you know, for a very like kind of lay audience. And so I have the slides for that and I have the recording of it. So I'll send it to both you and Carl, but you'd probably, you know, get some out of it too, Sue. Although you could probably do at least as good of a presentation as I could in terms of your knowledge of the subject, but I'll send you over the slides. I am like, have like a laser beam hitting me in the face right now from where I'm sitting in Roosevelt Ave.
Oh.
So anyway, this is great, guys. I really enjoyed this. And I think, yeah, let's just keep posted on it. So we have two live ones, kind of at different stages here, at least of specific things. I'm glad Carl is going and giving that presentation. Who did you say that was to? Was that just to Los Altos, Harold? Like
somebody in Los Altos, if I remember his email correctly. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we have all those going, I'd love to have, if we could in the next few weeks. There seems to be like 5 or 6 spots or something. You know, we still have Port Humani, we're still working on. That's a bit of a special case.
You say Port Hueneme?
Yeah, I always screw that up. And I know
down in like Ventura County.
Yeah. We've been engaged with the port for 5 months, and those ports are extremely interesting for a variety of reasons from a carbon removal perspective. But they're like one of the greenest. They got like some global award for like the most like sustainable port in like either North America or the world or something like that. You know, and they're just up the road from or down the road, I guess, from the port of LA, which has
they're north of it.
North of it, yeah. So,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there's just like little hooks, and we're just trying to get a couple of them to pop. And I think with each one that we make progress on that we can point to, it's my hope and hypothesis is that it will, you know, just model for other people how to do it. So, but yeah, trying to kind of get this going while my, you know, climate champion stuff, which is so fascinating and exciting, but oh my God, I feel like the dog who caught the ambulance with a couple in a good way, but it's like, yeah, I'll brief you guys on that separately, but that's definitely getting very, very exciting. But this relates to, there's this, if I can get into that, you know, little teasing of it near Climate Week, but by the time I get to Belém, because sustainable cities and resilient cities are a big part of the, you know, it's part of the action agenda, you know, at COP. And again, my hope is if to be able to kind of point to this is like this sort of mobilization that's happening at the city level around carbon removal, you know, has always been part of the goal.
Sue, you pointed to something early on that we didn't talk about further, but that's that local governments as well as states and counties have a lot of them have climate plans, and they're saying we're going to be carbon neutral by such and such a date, and then they start figuring out, well, okay, we can do certain things, but we're still not all the way there, and this is the gap where we fit in, and a narrative around that big question: how are we going to erase that gap? And a narrative around that might be more compelling if we can really hone it and have specific information from them about how this kind of a campaign will contribute to them being able to do that.
Yeah. And I think what you said too, Harold, is there's kind of two main layers, and it depends on who you're talking to in terms of who it resonates with most. Is like, as you were advising Sue, like some people are really drawn into the going negative and restoring the atmosphere, right? I think a lot of other people more immediately that are trying to solve the problem of we're not going to be able to get to net zero unless we use carbon removal, whether you're thinking about it at a local level or a state or a global one, but they're not mutually exclusive. I think that the one, like, they're definitely not. I mean, you're talking about like, we're not going to have a market for something right now if the only thing it does is it gets us to negative. You know what I mean? It's like too far off seeming, I think.
The transition point in people's thinking about this happens once they realize that by the time we get to net zero, the legacy is going to be worse than it is right now.
Yeah.
That's like, what?
Yeah.
All the work that we're doing, and when we get there, we're going to be worse off, and the temperatures are going to be higher, pollution, CO2 in the atmosphere is going to be higher. So that's a big aha for people. And I don't think very few people really get that until you show it to them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I think that not that they're not mutually exclusive. I mean, they work together well, I guess is even the better way of saying it, but you can lead with one depending on, what someone's signaling to you as their biggest concern or interest. But anyway, all right. Well, this was great. Thanks, Sue, for thinking through this. And then next week, if you guys happen to be around next week, I don't want to take all your time, but I am going to go upstate right after this call next week. But it would be awesome to see if we have any progress, and hopefully I have some stuff to report on the Albany front.
All right, cool.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Catch you later. Bye. See ya.
Thank you.
But I got to end this here. How do I do that? There we go.